So, Adrian, we've been talking about all these different kinds of fasts. We've talked about the limiting specific item. We've talked about partial day fast, a Daniel fast, a manna fast. You could even probably do a total fast if you
Mhm.
wanted to just abstain from any food and just do like a liquid fast or something
Mhm.
like that. But with all these options, I think one of the challenges for some people is how do I even get started with this? How do I kind of on ramp for a fast, regardless of which kind it is?
Yeah, and I think it's important to think through. It's going to vary a little bit based on what type of fast you do. Obviously, something where you're just skipping lunch doesn't take a ton of time and planning. But if you're going to do something like the manna fast or a Daniel fast, that requires a little bit more time to plan. So you don't want to just jump in without having thinking about it. Take time, research, and try out recipes that you might like. Reach out and talk to your spouse or your family or roommates, whoever you share meals with. Decide what you're going to do about social like gatherings. If someone has a birthday dinner, are you going to break your fast for that birthday dinner, or are you going to hold to it?
And I think there's both. Either option could be good there. Where my daughter's birthday is during Lent, and so if we were celebrating a fast, or observing a fast, we might still stop and celebrate my 5-year-old's birthday because that's something that's important for us, and we could do that. And that doesn't necessarily make us then suddenly not spiritual, or it's not a do-over and back to finish. And maybe that's something too that we can talk about is what happens if you fall off the wagon. And uh, I think from a spiritual perspective, especially for Christians, as we're talking about preparing our hearts for Easter, thinking about forgiveness, I think forgiveness is a part of that. Certainly, discipline is important, but there's grace for people who fall off the wagon. If you accidentally have your cup of coffee just because you're in a routine and you were fasting from caffeine, that doesn't mean that you failed the fast. It's not a competition. But if you're moving towards that goal of being closer to God and deepening your spiritual walk, you're going to continue that. Give yourself some grace and move forward.
Absolutely. Having that grace towards yourself and that self compassion, but then also having that plan of how do I get back on track? Is that making sure that if I'm limiting coffee, am I getting rid of the coffee in my house? Am I making sure that I'm communicating that clearly with whoever I might be meeting for coffee?
Right. So we're having these discussions with our family. We're maybe changing the shopping list. Maybe we are making plans for mealtime so that we don't just kind of let whatever happens happen. It is important to have a plan for this and to understand, go in with both eyes open, as Jesus says, count the cost. Not to say that it's a super expensive or undoable, but it is something to do advisedly, to think about.
Absolutely. From more of a nutrition standpoint, it can be important to consider items that might cause some GI distress if you cut them out completely. Common culprits of this are going to be gluten products and dairy products. If you already include those in your diet, you want to be careful about completely eliminating those from your diet. They can cause some just tummy upset when you bring them back in.
And if you're on specific medications, if you have a very specific diet, if you have medical conditions, you should certainly talk to your doctor, speak to your primary care physician before you start a fast if those are conditions for you, because we want to make sure that we do so in a healthy way. There are ways that you can appropriately fast, but it may just be that you have to tailor that.
Absolutely. Make sure you're consulting with your physician, and then also make sure that you're paying attention to how your body is responding to your fast. If you're noticing severe negative effects, note that you might need to change what you're doing or end your fast early.
So you could do that, and you're not a failure. You could switch from one kind of fast to a different kind of fast, maybe if that was something that was needed.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about how to get into the fast and what to do during the fast. What about coming off the fast? Say it's Easter. Do I go in and have the biggest, fattiest breakfast with all the things I've been buying myself?
Probably not a great idea. That can cause a lot of stomach upset. Make sure that you're working back in foods that you've eliminated nice and slow and gradually. Pay attention to how your body responds. And note that some things may taste different. For me, last year, I didn't use flavored creamer for my coffee. I switched to half and half only, and just a small amount. I have a hard time drinking flavored creamer now because it just tastes different. And that's not a bad thing. You have to decide for yourself, is it worth it to work it back into my diet, or am I okay not including that anymore?
So sometimes you've deprived yourself of something that may have been unhealthy, may not have been unhealthy, but now you decide this is a change that I want to make more permanent.
Hmm.
Yeah, and another thing that we mentioned as we were discussing earlier is maybe this is not primarily a weight loss program.
Yeah, there might be some benefit that you see from it. You're mostly going to be in a calorie deficit, eating less food. You might be eating healthier, especially if you're doing something like a Daniel fast. But the focus isn't on, oh, I'm going to get that beach bod. It's about, hey, I'm spending more time with the Lord, or I'm focusing on the Lord more, or in a different way.
Right. So while there may be physical benefits, certainly the reason that we fast is primarily for the spiritual benefit. And what we do find in a lot of people who engage in these spiritual disciplines is they tend to become disciplined in other areas of their life too. But that was not necessarily the why. That's kind of a fringe benefit.
Yeah.